So the great infallible Israeli army thought that they would go into a raid inside of Jenin refugee camp, which again, this is in the occupied West Bank. And what happened yesterday, I mean, I posted a thread about it on Twitter, and it went completely viral. It's got over 1.5 million views. Okay, so here you can see it on the screen, right? And I said that they launched what they thought would be a regular assault on the Jenin refugee camp, and they were in for a big surprise. A big surprise, right? They thought this was going to be a walk in the park like they usually do. They go in, you know, they kill a couple of journalists or kill a couple of civilians and leave. No. Look what happened. Video after video after video of Israeli trucks, jeeps, and armored vehicles just being blown off, right? And the thing is here that they used what you call IEDs. So these are improvised explosive devices, okay? And you have to take into account that these things, you don't just like, you know, take them out of your backpack and throw them or something. These have to be planted carefully. They take time. And this shows you that the Palestinians had planned this in advance, okay? And this is a tactic that you haven't seen really since the Second Intifada. I'll get into that in a moment. Just look at these videos. Let me just show you one after the other, right? What I'm talking about. You have a column. This is a whole column. Look at them. They're pinned down, these Israeli vehicles. They cannot move. You've got Israeli soldiers inside yelling for help and screaming for their mummies. They can't move, right? Here, they had to call for tractors to come get them out. You see it behind the trees. There's a tractor right there with big wheels, and now you can see it's towing another Israeli vehicle here that has been completely destroyed, right? Here's another one. So you can see from this angle how this vehicle is about to get blown up by an IED. And keep in mind, the guy whoever's filming, they had to know that there's something planted there, right? So they knew that this is going to happen, and they're detonating these things remotely. Take a look in a second. Now it's gonna there it is. Gone with the wind. Here's another vehicle. Hold on, it'll rewind in a second. Here's a third one. Here's a fourth one. So this was posted by the Al-Quds Sariya. So this is basically from the Al-Quds Brigade, which is the armed wing or military wing of Palestinian Islamic Jihad, right? So here you can see at the so just in a few seconds, 14-second mark. Now, I mean, that thing is gone. Look at the bottom. That thing is flying. It's taking off. It's got wings. Look, it's gone. Can you believe? And I was gonna say this for afterwards, but just take a guess. Tell me in the comments right now. How many casualties do you think the Israelis said they had officially? Just take a guess. After you're seeing all of this. This situation has gotten so bad that the Israelis had to send in helicopters. This is the first time that they send in helicopters in about 20 years. Right? So you can see here they've sent in an attack helicopter. You can see it firing rockets there, right? See me rewinding? Right? And then here, this is also interesting. This is this Israeli helicopter. You can see those things that are coming out from the helicopter. These are called flares or thermal flares. They're going to pop some more now. The reason they do this, the reason that helicopters do this, they're countermeasures, okay? So if someone on the ground has a Stinger, right, or whatever other homing or heat-seeking surface-to-air missiles, just SAM for short, surface-to-air missile, you know, it will look for the heat signature because the helicopter has an engine, it has all of these things going on, right? It generates heat, right? And just from its thermal image, you can lock onto it. And what they'll do is they'll try and pop off these flares, which are burning at such a, they're so hot because they're designed to confuse the computer, whether it's in another aircraft or it's on the ground, that is trying to lock onto the helicopter. So my point here is that you have to think that why would the Israelis waste thermal flares, these countermeasures, unless somebody on the ground in Jenin has a Stinger missile or some other kind of surface-to-air missile. Like this is really crazy. The Israelis are losing so bad on the ground. They send in the cavalry, right, like the air cavalry, and then they're also taking hits. You have to keep in mind that not only somebody trying to lock onto them from the ground with a SAM, they're also taking fire, light fire from machine guns and rifles and so on. Now here's another helicopter the Israelis had to send in to take in their casualties. Right? And this one was also taking fire, of course. But yeah, I wanted to show you, this is another video of a vehicle being towed, right? I mean, it's just game over. Like this is not their everyday incursion into Jenin. Look at this photograph here. Decimated, completely. It's kind of like, it reminds me of that column of Ukrainian tanks the other day. You remember? Well, they weren't Ukrainian tanks. They were American and German tanks, the Bradleys and Leopards. But it reminded me of that. This is so humiliating. It's so humiliating. You guys don't understand. I mean, the last time the Israelis were humiliated this bad is, as I said, it's the Lebanon War 2006, right? That was about 33 days long. And the Israelis thought, oh yeah, this is going to be a walk in the park. And then suddenly their ship is almost sunk, right? Like, you got Hezbollah. Hezbollah doesn't have a navy. So you're getting your ships attacked like on that level. Wow. And then, of course, forget the ships. The Israelis, they just had to leave after 4 weeks. They couldn't handle it. Yesterday, so here, look at the Palestinians in Jenin. They're taking all these bits from the Israeli tanks and the jeeps, and they're putting them together and they're parading them around town. Right, you got the guy honking like it's a wedding or something. Oh man, this is funny, really. So let's look at the casualties. I put at the end that, as usual, the casualty rate is disproportionate, right? Palestinians suffered the majority of casualties. 5 Palestinians killed. All of them were in their teens or their 20s. Okay, so very young. And I think one of them was a 15-year-old boy. And then you also have more than 90 Palestinians wounded, 23 of which are in critical to severe conditions. So that's from the Palestinian Health Ministry and on CNN, right? So coming back to my earlier question, how many casualties do you think the Israelis said they had? None. They said 7 wounded and no deaths. Now, I want to ask you a question. Now, maybe you might have some understanding of military vehicles, and even if you have no understanding whatsoever, just look the videos that I showed you now. Do you really believe the Israelis, they had not one single casualty? Like, I mean, when I say casualty, I mean someone that actually died, forget wounded aside, right? And remember, wounded can be very severe and so on, but do you really believe them? I don't believe them for 1 second. That is an astonishing claim to say, oh yeah, we got all these things decimated, truck after jeep after this, helicopters coming in to save them. No, I don't believe that for 1 second. You see, let me put this very simply. The Israelis have been taught a very, very, very long overdue lesson, right? Long overdue. Because every other week, whenever they feel like it, they just go into Jenin. Keep in mind, Jenin, I mean, first of all, it's a refugee camp. They attack a refugee camp, right? And this begs the question, why do people have a refugee camp in their own country? Because they're occupied. And keep in mind, the West Bank, this is not even officially speaking, this is not Israel or so-called Israel, right? So think of every incursion or attack on Jenin. I love this word, incursion. Think of every attack on Jenin as an invasion. They're literally going into another country, right? I mean, all of it's Palestine. You and I know that. But just, even from what is officially, quote unquote, Israel, this is like they're invading Palestine every time, right? But obviously we all know that Palestine has been permanently invaded by the Israelis, who have been taught a lesson here. And it's not that I think, oh, it's funny to blow to blow up jeeps and stuff. It's, hey man, you're in somebody else's country, you keep assassinating their people, killing their people, go home. They should have stayed in Poland or Australia or Brooklyn or wherever they came from. It's very simple, because they're coming. These are not, we're not talking about people just like coming in as tourists. These are people with tanks, helicopters, jeeps, machine guns, who assault and occupy Palestinians on a permanent basis, 24/7. So they should be given no quarter whatsoever. And this is a victory. Make no mistake, this is a big victory, and it's refreshing to see the resistance finally come to, because up until now, it's like they haven't been awake, right? And now they're finally awake. Let me go back to what I was saying before with the second Intifada, which ended around 2005, right? So Intifada is like uprising. Back then, right, you would see this kind of tactic a bit more, but ever since then, you don't see this too often with IEDs, right? Because as I said before, they take time to produce, to plant. You need to do them without being seen or surveyed, and without having the position of the IEDs revealed. You have to keep in mind that the Israelis, right, who from their perspective, right, and nobody else's, only theirs, they think that they are running quote unquote counterterrorism operations. Sorry, man, the only terrorist here is Israel. But anyway, think of what a security lapse this is, of how humiliating this is, that the Palestinian resistance was able to put all these IEDs in the refugee camp, these improvised explosive devices. And the Israelis, they were none the wiser. They had no clue. They were also, in case maybe you noticed this, but what the Israelis were doing, this is why you had columns of them bogged down, is that they were basically blowing up one of the Israeli vehicles attacking the camp, and then waiting for the other Israeli vehicles to come, and then hitting those as well, right? So usually you would refer to this as a double bombing attack. Sometimes it's a double suicide bombing attack, like the one that I saw, that I experienced in Pakistan when I was in school. Right next door, they blew up the Egyptian embassy, right? So this is al-Zawahiri, who is bin Laden's mentor. He blew up the Egyptian embassy, and I remember at the time, I told you guys the story before, like there was these weird noises, like car horns and so on, and we didn't know what was going on. And then there was the second, much bigger explosion. So it's basically a smaller explosion to draw in the security services or ambulances or emergency services, and then a bigger one. In this case, obviously, this is not a suicide attack or terrorist attack. They're defending themselves in their own country. But I'm just trying to explain the concept of how this works. That you have an initial bombing and then a second one, right? So, I mean, from the Israelis' point of view, if you don't want this to happen, then don't go attacking Jenin refugee camp. Don't go colonizing Palestine and invading Palestine. It's really that simple. There's nothing to it, period. So, this is what happened yesterday. Now let me get into the next, shall we say, part, because there's an after. Here, give me a second. Right, so the second part of the story, shall we say, is that today you had a Palestinian, two Palestinian commandos who attacked a petrol station. This is in Eli or Eli. I'm not sure how you pronounce it. It's Eli, right? So it's a settlement in the West Bank, an illegal Israeli settlement. They attacked this petrol station. These two commandos. They killed 4 Israelis and they wounded another 4 Israelis. Okay, and here let me show you. This is in the Guardian, all right? This is in the Guardian. So they're basically just reporting what I told you now, right? This is the same thing, killing at least 4 and wounding several others. And what happened to the commandos, the Palestinians? The Israelis shot dead the first one, and then the second escaped in a taxi or in a car or something like that. in some vehicle. And I'm not quite sure. There aren't many details about what happened to the second guy, to the second Palestinian. But now let's ask, why did this happen? Why did this happen? Well, first of all, you have illegal Israeli settlers in the West Bank. This is even from if you want to take the partition plan seriously and the Israeli point of view, this is not, what are you doing there? This is Palestine. But you have Israelis who build these illegal settlements. So even under international law, this is completely illegal. But this happened one day after the Israelis attacked Jenin refugee camp. This is a pattern, right? I'm going to give you another example here. And maybe you notice this yourselves, that every time the Israelis attack Jenin, during the attack, the Palestinians are fighting back, and they're fighting back the next day, right? So yesterday, Israel killed 5 Palestinians, all of them teenagers and in their 20s. 5 Palestinians killed yesterday, 90 Palestinians wounded, 23 of them in critical condition. And so the next day, the Palestinians killed 4 Israelis and wounded 4, right? When did something similar to this happen? Look here, I highlighted the dates for you. What happened on 26th of January this year? Israeli troops killed 10 Palestinians in a raid in the West Bank. That's 26th of January. What happened the next day, on the 27th? A Palestinian gunman killed 7 people, and they try to make it near a synagogue, like he's some anti-Semite. No, it has nothing to do with that. You can disregard that completely because it has no value to this story whatsoever, no relation. But you see what's going on here. 26th of January, the Israelis attack Jenin. The next day, there's a response. And keep in mind, this guy who killed 7 Israelis on the 27th of January. He doesn't belong to a party. He doesn't belong to some group. We have no clue, and he gives no indication as to what his political inclinations are. You know why? Because they're irrelevant. They're irrelevant. Same thing today. These 2 Palestinian commandos who attacked the petrol station and killed 4 Israelis and wounded another 4. They don't belong to any group. They don't belong to any militant organization, to any resistance organization, to any political faction, and it doesn't matter. The only thing that they have in common is that they're young, they're male, and they are sick of Israeli occupation. This is a natural resistance. There's no way you can fix this. The Israelis cannot fix this, and they will not get rid of this problem until they leave Palestine. This is the truth that they refuse to face. The reason you have Palestinian young men carrying out these attacks is because they are sick of living under the jackboot of Israeli occupation, period. And you are never going to stop this until you leave Palestine. That's it. When you go into Jenin and you start massacring Palestinians, other Palestinians are going to get angry because this is their country. These are their people. It's a natural resistance. It happens by itself. And this is why, and I just gave you one example, by the way. This is just one example, the 26th of January and 27th of January. But it's a tit for tat. You see, always tit for tat. You go and massacre Palestinians in Jenin. The next day, there's going to be retaliation. There's going to be blowback. I'm giving you my opinion or what I think. I'm just telling you the facts. My job is to report the facts. These are the facts. Palestinians get angry. Anyone would get angry. And they are at a disadvantage. Remember, Palestinians have no army. They have no air force, no navy. All they have is a will to resist. And under international law, they have every right to resist. This is not Israel, right? This is occupied Palestine, occupied. The example I gave you on the 27th of January, that's East Jerusalem. That's Palestine. Even under the worst of descriptions, right, of this like chopped up Palestine. That's Palestine. That's not Israel. The West Bank, once again, it's Palestine, not so-called Israel. Tit for tat. What do you want me to say? It's not my opinion. It's not because I like it. And I think it's sad. At the end of the day, you got human beings killing each other. What is this for? It's because the Israelis, they back the Palestinians into a corner and they give them no recourse. They give the Palestinians no recourse. This is their only avenue of retaliation. And like I said, if you go read the UN Charter or the Geneva Convention, anyone under occupation has the legitimate right to resist through any means necessary, by throwing stones, by firing Stinger missiles, by dropping nukes. I hope not, though. Let's not drop nukes. But you understand what I'm saying? I'm exaggerating. It's hyperbole, so you get my point here. They can do whatever they want. They can throw newspapers for all I care, right? That's what the law says. That's what the law says. That's what international law says. It's very clear. It's crystal clear. We've gone through this a million times on the channel. We've read the Geneva Convention together, and I've read the UN Charter too, and so on and so on, right? So this is the sad reality. As long as the Israelis keep massacring Palestinians, just like they did yesterday in Jenin, you're going to have responses like this. The only option, the only solution is for the Israelis to leave Palestine and go back to wherever they came from, instead of massacring the Palestinians with their tanks, with their missiles, with their planes, with their nuclear weapons. Remember, the Israelis have nuclear weapons, which they don't tell you about, which they keep secretly, which they refuse to sign the non-proliferation treaty. They refuse to sign the ban on chemical weapons, so they use white phosphorus. So who the hell knows, what kind of nuclear waste they're dumping in Dimona, where they have their one of their facilities, and elsewhere, or into the Mediterranean Sea. No one knows. Right? So on top of the human cost, on top of the human casualties, the environmental concerns, right, of Israel having a secret nuclear weapons program. And they already have the weapons, right? It's not even a question of they're trying to get them. They've had them for a long time. So, this is, just to conclude, this is tit for tat, and the Israelis need to leave Palestine. It's really that simple.